Hey y'all, welcome to day 2 of our nationalism unit. Let me jump in here real quick. So today's all about revolutions. You can probably tell the video quality is a little different than normal. The sound might be a little off. I'm having some really major technical difficulties here at school. So it is now 5:03 and I'm still here working on this for y'all. Anyway, I'm not sure if the sound is better or worse. I don't know if the video quality is quite as good. Let me know. You guys can just send me a message on Remind or just send me a message on Remind. That'll be fine. Let me know how the quality is and we'll go from there. So let's go ahead and jump right on in. So today is all about revolutions in Latin America. So looking at the map, you can see that there are several revolutions that occurred in Latin America. And the first one, this one right up here in orange, in Haiti in 1804. It's the very first revolution that occurred. And that's where we're going to start today. Okay, so this is Toussaint L'Ouveture. He was born in Haiti in 1743, and he was the son of a slave. So he was also a slave. He managed to earn the trust of the plantation owner and held a number of important positions. So he was like a livestock handler, he was a coachman, he was also a steward, which is kind of like a butler. He was granted his freedom in 1777, though. He was a very simple man who lived a very basic life. He was married, he had 2 sons. He was a very devout Catholic, and here's a little fun fact for you. It won't be on your test or anything, but he was also a vegetarian. So the revolution in Haiti began in 1804 with a slave rebellion. And at that time, he wasn't fully committed to either side of the revolution. But a few weeks into it, he managed to help his former master escape, as many of the plantations were being burned. The plantation owners were being murdered, and then they were being destroyed. So after he helped his former master, he did end up joining the revolt. He quickly realized that the leaders of the rebellion weren't very good at their jobs. So Toussaint L'Ouveture, he gathered up his own group of slaves and black Haitians, because remember that it wasn't just slaves who rebelled. These ideas of enlightenment had been spreading and reaching people all the way around the world. So anyway, L'Ouveture, he ends up training his followers in a different type of war tactic that we haven't discussed much up to this point, and that is guerrilla warfare. So guerrilla warfare is a very unorthodox method of fighting at this time, meaning that rebels didn't just stand in lines and shoot at the soldiers like warfare had been done in years past. They would hide and they would use the landscape to their advantage. And because of this unexpected technique, he was able to defeat the French, the Spanish, and the British armies. So as a result, Haiti was the first Latin American country to win independence. After the revolution, Toussaint L'Ouveture retired to the countryside. However, Napoleon Bonaparte thought that L'Ouveture was a threat and was kind of afraid of him, which we know Napoleon was afraid of a lot of people. So he had him arrested. He had Toussaint L'Ouveture put into a jail cell, and this is where L'Ouveture eventually died. Now, in your notes, it talks about watching a video that's posted on Google Classroom and taking some more fun facts down about L'Ouveture. So, here's the deal. The video it's probably about 55 minutes long. I do not expect you to have that watched before you come into next class. I don't think it's fair for me to give you a lecture video, and then have that one on top of that. So, what I would like for you to do before the end of this unit, before we take the test, I want you to have watched that video, gone back through and taken your notes. And I will be checking that as a homework grade as well. So you have a couple days to make sure you get that video watched. It's pretty interesting. I think you'll probably like it. It's not like a total snooze fest or anything. So, so make sure you get that taken care of for me, okay? All right, so here is what the Haitian Revolution looked like there, a painting of it anyway. All right, so what is it that's making these revolutions so easy? Well, it's this guy. It's Napoleon, okay? Remember him? We just talked about him last unit, how he had become the Emperor of France in 1804, and he was on a mission to completely unify all of Europe under the French flag. So, while he was busy attempting to conquer all of Europe, the European countries that he was attacking, they were so busy defending themselves at home that they didn't really worry so much about what was going on in their overseas colonies. So Napoleon was a distraction for the European countries. So let's look at some of the other revolutions that occurred. Okay, this is Simón Bolivar, and he's a pretty important guy when it comes to Latin American revolutions. He was a Creole leader who had been born in Venezuela. So if you remember from the first day's video when I talked about the rigid class system in Latin America, Creoles were of European descent. So they had, their parents were Peninsulares, and the Creoles were actually born in the Americas, okay? So remember that Creoles could not hold high government offices, but they were allowed to hold rank in the military. So eventually the Creoles get tired of not being able to hold office like the Peninsulares, and uprisings begin to happen. Simón Bolivar, he had a couple nicknames. He was known as the Liberator, as well as the George Washington of South America. He had been educated in Europe, and he had also been exposed to these different Enlightenment thoughts as he had been in the newly independent United States, where he had also seen how colonists had risen up against the monarchy and had been successful in setting up their own government. Bolivar led revolutions in 5 Latin American countries. Those were Venezuela, Colombia, Panama, Ecuador, Peru, and of course Bolivia, which was named after Simón Bolivar. All right, our next guy, Father Miguel Hidalgo, he is responsible for the independence movement in Mexico. He was born in 1753 in Corralejo, Mexico. He studied theology and was ordained as a priest in 1778. And when his older brother passed away, his older brother had been a parish priest, so he took over as parish priest in Dolores, Mexico. He had major issues with the racial inequality that was going on there. And on September 16, 1810, he rang the church bells, calling all of the citizens of Dolores to the church, where he made a very compelling speech announcing that there would be a revolution against Spain and encouraging them to join him. This speech ends up becoming known as the Grito de Dolores, or the Cry of Dolores. The citizens were eventually joined by thousands of natives and mestizos. They managed to capture several important cities west of Mexico City, which was the capital of Mexico, but they were defeated at Guadalupe. And Hidalgo fled north, hoping to make it to the United States, but he ended up being captured. So he was then expelled or kicked out from the priesthood, and because he was considered to be a rebel, he was executed by firing squad. So, as a part of his legacy, though, the 16th of December, the day of the Cry of Dolores, or the Grito de Dolores, that is Mexican Independence Day. So that's part of his legacy. Okay, this handsome fellow with the nice hairdo, this is Dom Pedro, and he, I'll be honest, the independence that, so Brazil getting its independence is kind of a boring story, but it's important nonetheless. So, Dom Pedro was a prince. And yes, I mean that he was a real prince. His father was the king of Portugal. And when Napoleon had conquered Portugal and Spain in 1807, the royal family of Portugal, they fled to Brazil, which you should remember was one of the colonies of Brazil at the time. So a few years later, I think it was about 6 years later, when the king decided to return to Portugal, Dom Pedro decided that he was going to stay behind in Brazil. Now the king allowed that to happen, but Brazilians were not too happy about becoming a colony again. So in 1822, Creoles demanded independence from Spain, and over 8,000 of them petitioned for Dom Pedro to be the ruler of Brazil. Well, the king agreed, and on September 7th, 1822, Brazil was officially declared independent. So, when I say that Brazil's fight for independence is kind of boring, it's because it was a completely bloodless revolution. So, for my battle geeks out there, I hate to disappoint you, but there was no bloodshed. It was just kind of a boring revolution, if you will. So, in your notes, I want you to take a moment and answer the question that's written down there. What aspects of the Age of Enlightenment do you think influenced the revolutions in Latin America? Think about the philosophers that we've talked about, like Locke and Rousseau or Montesquieu, Voltaire. Think about the documents that we've talked about. The Declaration of Independence, the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen, which you read in class. Take all of those into consideration, okay? So click pause and do that now. Okay. Poverty in Latin America. So while being independent is great, it also can bring some problems as well. So it meant a loss of support from more wealthy countries, right? So independence brings poverty across Latin America. 3 major impacts that you need to know. 1, the wars disputed trade. So if trade isn't happening, then money is not coming into the country. Therefore, income decreases and poverty is going to increase. Number 2, the wars destroyed much of the cities as well as the countryside. So this is where your crops are being grown out in the country, and goods are being manufactured in your city. So if you're not able to make anything or you're not able to grow anything, then you don't have anything to trade. So that leads us to number 3. Military dictators ended up taking over and were very poor leaders. So again, this also increased the poverty levels of Latin America. All right, so our new countries are vulnerable, okay? These new countries have formed and they've gone through some very dramatic changes, so they're also vulnerable to attack from European countries that would want to conquer them and colonize them again. And Latin Americans were fearful of this, as was James Monroe, who happened to be the President of the United States at the time. He issued the Monroe Doctrine in an effort to protect not only the new republics that had formed in Latin America, but also the United States, which we were still a young country as well. So here's what the doctrine stated. First of all, it recognized the Latin American countries who had gained their independence as independent countries. That didn't always happen, but it did. We acknowledge that they are now independent countries and no longer parts of Great Britain or France or Spain or anything like, or Portugal, okay? So second, it was also a warning to European countries that might want to come over and attempt an attack on these newly formed countries. It basically said that any threat to a country in the Western Hemisphere was the same thing as threatening the United States, and nobody really wanted to go to war with the United States. It also promised that the United States would stay out of European affairs. So kind of like you see in the illustration there, we got Uncle Sam standing there talking to this gentleman is supposed to be from Great Britain, and this gentleman is supposed to be from like France, Germany, that area. And he's basically saying, look, stay over there on your part of the world. We don't need you over here, okay? So you guys stay over there, and we'll stay over here, and everything will work out fine. So U.S. is promising to stay out of European affairs. And this is still a cornerstone for our foreign policy today. It's still part of what we respect and what we go by today. All right, so that was a lot of information. Next video is going to cover post-revolution in Europe, what's going on there and such. So I will see you then.